everyone. Excited to be back with you here again and just to share some encouragement for you today. There's a lot been going on in America the last couple of weeks, and what does God have to think about what is happening? We've had the pandemic of COVID-19. We've got all kinds of racial tensions with what's going on with the George Floyd murder, protests, the looting that has been taking place. All kinds of things have been happening like crazy across our country. And we want to kind of get some thoughts that maybe God would have on this matter. And so I have gone to the book of Nehemiah and just want to encourage you with a few words that we see from this story. Real quick, a history lesson was 586 BC. We see that Jerusalem is overtaken by the Babylonians. And they destroy the city, they take Jews captive, and the city was pretty much uprooted. They destroyed the temple, they broke down all the city gates. We see this happening in our country even now. Cities are being destroyed, businesses are being torn down, and it's just a pretty intense time. Fast forward 70 years, and now it's 516 BC, and the Persians overtake the Babylonians. And now the Persians have kind of inherited all of these Jews that they don't really want. It's like getting a Christmas present. You don't really want this present. And so you're thinking, how can I re-gift this thing and get rid of it? And so they have this idea, I want to get rid of 50,000 Jews were then sent back to Jerusalem, and they're told to restore your city and to restore the walls that have been broken down and your city gates and your businesses. And they're released and freed to go. Now, here we are, 445 BC, and there's this man that comes along by the name of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king. He's living in the Persian Gulf, which is about 1,000 miles away from Jerusalem. And as the cupbearer, he doesn't have a ton of significance. He is kind of the go-between between some of the best wine around the world that the king is going to drink, but potentially could be some poison mixed in there. This job is pretty expendable. You know, hey, drink this wine. Oh, he died. Move him on. Bring in the next guy and see if he dies, right? So he's pretty, an expendable role in the king's story. However, he's living in the king's palace. He's got all the resources and access to the kingdom, and he's disconnected from what is going on. I just wonder, how many times do you maybe feel disconnected from all of the craziness that's going on around our country and kind of wishing that you felt it more? Or maybe you're in a part of America where you are feeling it pretty intensely. But just because you are isolated from it doesn't mean that we need to be insulated from it. Being disconnected from what is happening around our country doesn't mean that we shouldn't feel something and have some sort of a response inside of our inner man, especially if we've got the mind of God and a heart like God would want us to have. And so here we see Nehemiah, and he hears what's going on in his community, and he goes before the king, and he asks, can I go to my people and help them rebuild this community? What happens here in Nehemiah is he comes in and he does a couple things in the right order. Some of y'all know doing the things in order matters. And he comes in and he first asks questions. What's going on? What's the whole story? He's got a few people that are giving him the report, and he gets the report back. He asks right questions. Sometimes we walk in and we just start making statements. We start saying, this is the way it's going to be. And I know sometimes me as a dad, I might just get half of the story and just lay into my kids, or maybe in our churches or in our cities or in our businesses, we might just come in with statements. He comes in with questions. He wants to know the full story. And the Bible says in Proverbs, he who speaks on a matter that he knows not of makes him a fool. And so Nehemiah gets the whole story, and then his response is not to hop on Twitter and tweet about it. He doesn't log into Facebook and make all kinds of comments. And we know that that's kind of funny because obviously that stuff wasn't going on then. But he didn't go door to door sharing his opinion. He didn't get a town hall meeting venting what he thought. His response was that he wept. He looked at the condition of the nation and he was broken. There was something in him where he didn't want to have a response. He didn't want to defend. He didn't want to have all of the right answers. He wanted to weep. And he moves into fasting and prayer. There was about a 4 to 6 month time from the month of Kislev to the month of Nisan, 4 to 6 months where he just wept and prayed and sought the heart of God. And I would love for us just to seek the heart of God and to be broken for our brothers, for our sisters, and so much stuff that people have to go through in this life. And then Nehemiah shares this prayer. And he begins to confess sins of his nation. And the confession of the sins is a place where I think we all need to be. Here's what I like about Nehemiah. He confessed his sins that he himself didn't commit. And as we see racial tension going on, perhaps you're thinking, well, I didn't enslave anybody, or I haven't been racial towards anyone, or I haven't had any issues or biases inside of my own heart towards any certain group. Nehemiah didn't even live there, but he took on the burden of sin of his nation. He was a precursor to Jesus, where Jesus took on the sins of everybody else. And he begins to ask for forgiveness. And he says, God, would you forgive me and my father's house for all the sins that we've committed? And then he asks this. I want to read this right here. He says, God, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant, that he is praying before you day and night for the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's house, have committed against you. And we're just asking, God, would your eyes be on our nation again? Would your ears be attentive to our prayers? Would you look upon our weeping, our fasting, and our prayer? Because we need a breakthrough in our nation. So what prayer does is it slows my soul. It slows my response from having an emotional response and a very short-lensed view. Prayer helps me get a long lens view and a wisdom-focused view with the mind of God. And so I just want to encourage all of us, let's move to a moment of brokenness, of just aching for our nation, of fasting and prayer. And let's see if God will do a breakthrough in our country. Love you, cheering for you, believing God's best is still in store. We'll see you later again.